Hey there berries, welcome to another Evercore Heroes guide. This one is a head-to-head guide, which is basically the end game bosses. So if you manage to make it to the final two teams at the very end of the game, the two final teams will be up against each other doing an event. Two which are bosses at the moment in the closed beta, and one is a gauntlet. Now in this video we're going to be covering each of those one by one. We're going to be covering the Kru Mines, the Moxy Treetops, and the Hardfrost Harbor, and how to do those objectives and how to get extra damage boostings by doing the skill checks in some of those. Now this first one is the Kru Mines. Do note that the footage here is taken from my Twitch stream, so there's a giant XP bar in the top left hand corner, ignore that. But this is all streamed on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. You feel free to welcome to come on and ask any questions about Evercore Heroes, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. So the first objective, the first head-to-head that we're going to be looking at is in the Kru Mines, a troll called Thrashclaw, and it's going to be the first team to kill him. So we're going to play the clip. So when you first enter in, all of your players on your team will go in, and this troll basically has two phases really, and as you can see, as both teams are kind of hitting the boss, we are the yellow team, the yellow dart team, and the enemy team is the lance team, which is the green team. Both teams are hitting the boss and their health bar is getting reduced. As you can see, we're currently falling behind a little bit. But once we get to those like two clashing swords right at the top, that's going to start a phase, and the troll will basically jump off into the distance and a skill check will happen. So you can see those little circles on the ground. There's one to the north, one to the south, and one in the middle. Basically, the more players when that skill check is available, when you stand on those, it will kind of like slowly beam around it in a circle, and then it will be completed. You need to basically stand and unlock all three of those circles individually, one by one. So we're about to enter that phase right now. As you can see, we're all standing on the same platform. It's glowing in that little ring around it. And then you need to move over to another platform and communicate to which one you're going to at the same time. Now the red areas here is just flat damage over time. You can walk over them, but as you can see, you take quite a lot of ticking damage. It is possible to heal through it. So as you can see here, we're healing through it in order to get through the damage and do the skill check. And we get 20% damage for 20 seconds. So we were falling behind a little bit in the health bar, but this should help us increase our damage against the boss and catch us up. So now as you can see in the health bar at the very top, yellow team is now in the lead. Yeah, so you want to make sure that you're focusing on that. After the first skill check, there will be a new ability on the boss, and it's that frost breath that you may have just noticed just then. So roughly every round about 20 seconds, he will do a frost breath that does a gigantic amount of damage. You're going to need to use the pillars in the room in order to block getting hit by those frost breaths. It does lock onto a player for about a second before it does that frost breath. So it might do it soon. So now it's doing a massive AoE. Frost breath is there. It kind of locked onto the player, so then it locked onto void. And if you are aware that it's locked onto you, you want to try and face it away from the group, and then you're still able to attack the boss from behind when he's doing the frost breath. But basically it's kind of like a 100-degree cone. Here's the frost breath going straight into the middle, and as you can see, it just one shot our healer, so we're gonna have to revive our healer. Also throughout the fight, you've got these little trolls that spawn. They're incredibly weak, but if you don't actually kill them, they actually do a lot of damage with those little blue ice bolts that they're firing out. And as you can see here, we're doing another skill check. We're going as a group one by one to each of the objectives, and then as I did mention that it does go faster the more people are on. It goes very, very slowly if only one person's on one of the circles. So you're going to want to use your pings to make sure that the team is communicating in which platform they want to go to first. Other than that, he does lots of like ice pillars dropping down into the ground, lots of AoE, frost breath incoming here, and you just want to try and attack it as best as you can. Some heroes, like the one that Labana is on, Aurea, she can actually kind of auto attack through those pillars. I'm not sure if that's a bug or not, but she can actually safely attack and use abilities behind those pillars. Some of the ranged characters can. It's quite a nice ranged fight, honestly, in order to be able to get behind those pillars. But as you can see there, one shot, we got hit by that ice beam, and it does a lot of damage. In terms of health, looks like we are going to probably be making out here, unless we make any too big mistakes here. We should be fine. Just DPSing it down at the very end, making sure we don't get hit by any of the telegraphs on the ground, and that's a dub. So the next one we're going to be looking at is, the next clip is, we're going to be entering into the Moxy Treetops, which is basically a gauntlet. It's kind of like a tower defense. Oh, one thing I should note is, before we go in, at the top right hand corner, we are currently the Lance team in this one, and the enemy team is the yellow team, the Dart team. Depending on how much LUM, which is like the Evercore health, that you end up with, determines on how much LUM you have at the start of this event. So because we came second in the LUM defense at the end, our structure, our core, only has 100 health, whereas the enemy has 130. Now it doesn't matter how much LUM you have at the end. Like, you could come second with 1 HP left, and the Dart team could have 1,000. These will always be the set values. So the first team, the yellow team, will always have 100. But the winning team will always have 130. Second team will always have 100. So it's important that you try and get an advantage in that. In terms of LUM advantage, at the end of the other boss fights, it isn't clear if there's actually a damage boost if you have more LUM going into those other events, like the troll, for example. It is rumored that your damage does get increased slightly if you are the #1 team at the end of that event, but there is no indicator in game to say otherwise. So at the moment, it's just a rumor. So here on the gauntlet defense on the Moxy, basically we have to look out for little caves where mobs can spawn out of. You'll be able to see the other enemy team. So that's an enemy team's portal, where the portal the mobs can, you can see, like, kind of on the left hand side, you can see the enemy team running around and things like that. And mobs basically slowly come into the core here, and we need to basically defend that. So on the map, you can kind of see like a red goblin like icon, and they're spawning these mobs out of these little purple caves. Now these purple caves come up more and more and more as the event goes on. It gets faster and faster, plus there'll be elite mobs spawning. If you actually kill a certain amount, it's not clear whether or not it's a certain amount or a particular mob, you'll be able to send more mobs over to the enemy team. So it's worth here on this one trying to kill as many as you can, rather than just trying to kite them away from the boss. And this is one of the elites. He's kind of strong, quite tanky. This one's kind of bugging out, so it's working out in our favor. He's just walking into the wall there, as you do. Must be a Monday for him. And you can use that portal to kind of zip back and forth to the other side to try and, like, you know, alleviate some pressure on the opposite side of the map. So there you can see that the enemy team has one spawning from onto their side. And we're going to take the portal over again because there is some more elite spawning over here, and there is a purple cave. There will be a lot more pressure on the base shortly. As you can see, there's already 2 elites here. So basically you want to kill these elites as fast as possible. Soon there will be lashes going onto the core as well, and they hit the core for a lot, and also they hit you for a lot as well. This is something that you can't solo, which we discovered. As you can see, we've got a lot more of these elites coming over. I believe if you kill one of those, it seems to send it back over to the other team's base, but this is the lasher. Does a lot of damage. You can't really crowd control them or try to knock them back there with the tsunami. It does not work. They just stay in place. And yeah, they do a lot of undodgeable auto attack damage. So you really need to get your whole team back in order to defend that. And as you can see, the whole base is slowly getting overwhelmed. And the lashes do a reasonable amount of damage to the core. So I think ideally the thing you want to do here is that you want to have your tank kind of focus on the corridor where those elites are coming from, and then have your DPS prioritize DPSing down the lashes when they do spawn, and then grabbing any mobs that do spawn on the outer edges and bringing them to the tank. Basically, I think that's largely the game plan. If you're able to, you know, do pretty well, you can try and quickly have one person, if they have Lone Wolf maybe, which is like an item which allows them to work more efficiently by themselves, to go off and try and kill some of those portals quickly by themselves, because killing the portals themselves, they're pretty squishy, and it would stop these little monsters from spawning. So mainly right now we're getting overwhelmed by elites. We've got 4 of these kind of frog tree elite things going on here, and our whole team is just getting overwhelmed. Our tank has fallen down now. I think he took a few charges to the face there. The core is taking a lot of damage. I think we actually ended up doing quite well here. I think we ended up coming second, but we did close that 30 gap advantage that the other team had. As you can see, there's only like a 10 lom gap here right now, 46 to 31. Ends up being really close in the end, even though the enemy team had a 30 head start. So even though the enemy team does get that head start, with a bit of skill and coordination, you can definitely kind of catch up and narrow that gap a little bit more. But yeah, it gets a bit overwhelming at the end. So it is worth trying to, if possible, to have one of your heroes sneak around, maybe to get rid of one of those portals to alleviate some of the pressure of the little mobs coming in, so you can just focus on the lashes and the elites. Going into the final one on the closed beta right now, we've got Hardfrost Harbor. So this one is a giant ice elemental. It's quite a fun fight. On closed beta, there are a couple of minor bugs with this one though, but we'll go through it as best as we can. But really cool kind of fight here, involving kind of tank having to pay attention here. So throughout the fight, it'll kind of like push its hands into the ground. You can actually attack its hand and the body at the same time. So if you have AoE here, you're going to be able to do double damage essentially to the boss. So make sure you're trying to hit the hand and the boss at the same time. I'm playing a healer here. I'm playing Becco with an auto attack build, so I'm just like spamming my autos on the boss at the moment. And you are actually able to attack the boss throughout the entirety of the phases, even when the skill check kind of phase happens. So there's going to be a new phase here. All these mobs are going to spawn, and there's meant to be a skill check here where whoever defeats the minions the quickest, basically the boss then goes onto their side a bit, so you basically get some free damage here. So you can see that the boss spawns on our side for a little bit, and we got some free damage time, and then it goes back into the middle. So if you kill the minions faster, the elemental should dip into your side a little bit for temporarily. So here you can see that our tank is now in an ice block. Now ideally, you got 2 options here. You can break the ice block, which will then allow the tank to be able to do damage here. But when the ice blocks on the tanks happen, a tsunami of ice of an ice wall will basically come down the lane. And if you stand behind this ice pillar, you will basically, it will break part of the wall, and then you can stand behind it and then not get hit by the wall. So as you can see here, we're going to be standing behind the ice pillar, so that the tank doesn't take damage. The ice wall basically breaks the thing for us, and then we can hide behind that, and then we don't have to deal with it. There are a couple of tanks that can just kind of face tank it. They have a giant, some of them have a giant wall, like Tyr I think can put up his wall and just, you know, walk up to it and just mitigate all damage from it. And he's got a really good way of just basically avoiding that game mechanic. So soon we're going to be entering into the final phase. So here's another tsunami. We're trying to get behind it. Keeps plummeting its hands in. So here we're going to have phase, another phase where he's going to channel a red laser these red lasers are basically cones. So it's like one line going out to his left, one line going out to his right, and the entirety in that area is bad. You don't want to be inside it. It's going to be a lot of cold damage, and the only way to stop him from doing that is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger on your side, unless you kill these ice elementals. The quicker you kill these ice elementals, the quicker that this cone will stop happening. Also, another thing about these elementals is that they do drop those frozen frost puddles on the ground, which do a lot of damage, so make sure you don't stand in them. The tick damage is pretty high. So here we're just killing the mobs. The small mobs drops little ones. The big mobs drop big circles. Just make sure you're not standing in those. Hit the boss as much as you can. Here we broke the ice shard from our tank. But the damage wasn't too bad. Actually, it only did about 30% damage to our tank. So as long as your tank is paying attention and the team is paying attention, just make sure you stand behind the tank when that happens. If you're in a pug, might be a good idea as the tank to move forward north more, so that your team has a better indication of where like the hole in the wall is going to be. And we won that one. So that basically covers the different bosses at the head-to-heads in Evercore Heroes. Obviously, things are subject to change. This is very, very early in the beta, but hopefully that gives you a good idea while you are playing on the beta how to handle those head-to-heads and what the little skill checks are, and how to increase your odds at defeating the enemy team in order to get that glorious victory. Well, that is your Evercore Heroes guide for today. I am making more Evercore Heroes guides on this channel. I've got individual hero guides and what they kind of look like in a game session to give you a better indicator whether or not you should spend your in-game currency or your real life money picking up those heroes, so be sure to check them out. I'll put a playlist for all those kind of videos in the description down below. And yeah, all the best in Evercore Heroes. Hope you guys are enjoying the content. Please sure to subscribe in order to catch more Evercore Heroes content, and maybe I'll see you in game soon. All the best, take care.